Hey guys, it's me, Poppy Rain here, coming to you with like the 80th video of the day. And today, I started reading one of the new books for you guys today. I'm gonna alternate back and forth between the two books. So I'm gonna read the other new book today, the first part of it. I started to read the first part of the other one. I didn't get very far because because little man woke up. Anywho, this is Good Fairies by Brian Freud. He wrote the other book that we're reading too. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But for point purposes of this, I am going to take the jacket off to make this easier for reading. And the other side is Bad Fairies by Brian Freud. It's got both in here. So we're going to read the first section today. And each section, we might read multiple sections we might read partial sections depending on how long the section is. We might read full sections depending on how long, or we might read multiple sections. So we might read just one section, we might read multiple sections, or part of a section, just depends on how long the section is. Because I do try and keep these videos about a half hour to 40 minutes. Okay. The fairies I draw are spontaneous manifestations of my relationship with the world. A normally invisible domain is given form first of all in my sketchbooks. Fairies' faces emerge from the blank white pages if out of a mist. A few loose random squiggles are drawn, and suddenly a complete professionality appears, demanding attention and a name. So this is the preface. Once upon a time, I thought fairies lived in a book, old folk tales, and the past. That was before they burst upon my life in a vibrant, luminous being, permeating my art and my everyday existence and causing glorious havoc. Until 1976, I lived in London and worked as an illustrator, creating images to go along with other people's words. Then I moved to a small country village in Devon, along with my friend Alan Lee and his family. As I walked through the forest of oak and ivy, across the wild expanse of Dartmoor, among stone circles, Bronze Age ruins, and tumbled stones of old castle walls, I began to hear words and stories whispered by the land itself. I listened to those stories, soaking in the spirit of the land with its wealth of folklore and myth. Together, Alan and I created Fairies, a book of pictures and fairy lore, which went on to become an international bestseller. This book was considered by many to be a definitive guide to the fairy realm, but I soon discovered that my journey through the land of fairy had just begun. I learned that the denizens of that land were confined to stories from any age long gone. They were all around me, tangible pulses of energy, spirit, emotion, and light. They took on form, and they stepped into my art, cloaked in shapes of nature and myth. I'd attracted their attention while creating fairies, and they weren't finished with me yet. In the years after the publication of Fairies, I worked on many other projects, each of them steeped in magic. For Jim Henson, I designed 2 movies based upon my art, The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. I published other books such as The World of Dark Crystal, Brian Freud's Fairylands, Lady Coddington's Pressed Fairy Book, Strange Stains and Mysterious Smells. That's the other book we're currently reading. And The Goblin Company, the last 3 with Terry Jones of Monty Python fame. Yet all these publications, fairies seem to have captured the imagination of the greatest number of readers. When I ventured out of my Devon studio to work on projects halfway across the world, people sought me out clutching well-worn copies of the volume. They were all of ages and from all walks of life, but they had one thing in common: an intense relationship with the book and an immense affection for the imaginary within. The fairies had entered their lives and shaped their dreams and touched their hearts. It had been 20 years since Fairies was published, and in that time I was never stopped on my own personal, intensive explorations of the fairy realm. During these years, I met my wife Wendy, a sculptor and doll maker, on the set of The Dark Crystal. Our son Toby was born, and we moved to a 17th century Devon longhouse built on Saxton's foundation. Fairy paintings and drawings began to crowd me out of my studio, spilling onto the rest of the house, alongside my wife's mystic sculptures, woodland masks, and fairy dolls. My paintings are not illustrations drawn from specific fairy stories or folklore texts. Rather, they are images painted intuitively, springing directly from visions guided by fairy muses, a paradoxical mix of chance and intent. As this body of fairy imaginary grew, I also followed the fairies' footsteps in the study of the world mythology, archetypical, psychologically, and magical esoterica. Through painting, I discovered much about fairy nature in a daily, very personal way, and found these discoveries echoed in myth, folklore, art, and visionary writings from cultures all around the world. Fairies was a book that concentrated on the fairies of the past, found in old British tales. Good Fairy, Bad Fairy is about the magic in our lives today. It links fairies of the past with fairies of the present and the future. I'd always wanted a book to be more than just a presentation of my fairy art. I'd also hoped to address the process of creativity and imagination that enabled direct communication with the luminous living fairy realm. In folklore, they say that those who can see the fairies are blessed with second sight. Where some people perceive only empty fields, a man or woman with second sight can see a host of fairies dancing in a ring or the shining entrance to a fairy hill. Where some notice only an ordinary street or shop or marketplace, others see fairies in human disguise, paying for market goods with mystical coins that will turn into mere stones and leaves when the fairies have gone. Through painting pictures and listening to the spirits of the beautiful land where I make my home, I have discovered that the second sight is not limited to people in old folk tales. We can all learn to have the sight to see the fairy world around us. It shimmers in every autumn leaf and lingers in every cool blue shadow. It gives every stone and stream and grove of tree vibrant, animated life. Second sight can also be called insight into the fairy realm, into the very heart of the nature, and into the mystical world that lies deep within the human soul. In ancient Greece, the word eidola meant image, and eidolon meant soul. Image, then, a way of understanding and envisioning the soul. This book is what I call imaginosis, or knowing through image. A book of images designed to spark self-revelation. Such images grow from my own inner journey and daily contact with the fairies. By experience, I have found them to be irrational, poetic, absurd, paradoxical, and very, very wise. Fairies are the inner nature of the land and of the reflection of their inner nature of our souls. And soul. They bestow the gift of inspiration, self-healing, and self-transformation. But they also create the mischief in our lives. Wild disruptions, times of havoc, mad abandon, and dramatic change. Humans have long maintained close daily connections with the fairies. In centuries past, we've acknowledged them by many traditional names: Bogarts, Boglas, Bocans, Bugains, Brownies, Bluecaps, Banshees, Minfies, Nippers, Knickers, Knockers, Noggles, Lobs, Hobs, Scrags, Oifs, Spunks, Spurns, Hodgepodgers, Moon Dancers, Puckles, Thrumpins, Mokins, Gallytrots, Melsh Dicks, and Murad others. Just as they have many different names, they appear to us in many different guises. They are shapeshifters, highly mutable, for no fairy or nature spirit has a fixed body. In their essence, fairies are abstract structures of flowing energy formed of an astral matter that is so sensitive as to be influenced by the emotion and thought. In their most primal form, we perceive them simply as pulsing forces of radiant light, with the glowing center located in the brain of the head or heart. In the more highly evolved fairies, the head and the eyes are more strongly defined, responding both to mystic patterns and to human thoughts. These abstract forces delight in coalescing into wings and flowing drapery, taking on shapes that reflect the human, animal, plant, and mineral world. In this book, we explore the nature of the fairies in all their various shape-shifting guises as guardians, guides, godmothers, and muses. The good fairies of the Twilight Realm are agents of self-growth and transformation, embodiments of the healing energies that flow through nature and through ourselves, both luminous and illuminating. They reveal hidden aspects of our soul. Yet, as centuries' worth of folklore points out, fairies can also be tricky creatures, delighting in all things irrational, nonsensical, and wickedly absurd. Did you ever wonder why your socks never match or your buttered toast always falls face down? Did you ever wonder what a pang of regret looks like, or a mild panic? Here you'll see the faces and forms of the creatures behind these and darker problems, the bad fairies who pinch us, nip us, trip us up, and lead us astray. Yet even bad fairies have their gifts to bestow when understanding their contrary natures. By recognizing and naming them, you'll find they can teach you how to spin the straw of your life into gold. The pictures that follow were inspired by the dynamic, spirited world around me, the fairy creatures who have guided, disrupted, enchanted, and plagued my daily life, pushing, prodding, provoking, sometimes tripping me up so that, flat on my back, I can see from a new perspective. They populate my studio, snooze among the books and paints, flit through the window, nest in the cupboards, play silly pranks, and offer bright gifts. You'll find them in forests, on mountains, in deserts, on sandy reefs, at the edge of the sea, in the gold mist of a country dawn, or the silver smoke of an urban twilight. In England and in America, and in landscapes throughout the world, fairies are the inner nature of each land, and a reflection of the inner nature of our souls. They surround me now as they surround you. You need only the sight to see them. Pictures in this book all insisted on manifesting themselves on my drawing board. Nothing is made up. These images are direct fairy communications. The words I've used to describe the pictures emerge from the same mysterious place, pulsing in and out of focus, and as though they came to me through distorting glass. This is the way fairies communicate, with high seriousness combined with humor, with symbols, lists, jokes, connections, repetition, tangents, and deliberate confusion. The smallest figure in the background of a picture might be the most important aspect of all, or an absurd phrase might contain the hidden messages the fairies intend. Some fairies demand a complex understanding and mythical erudition. Others express themselves telepathically. Still, others are deceptively direct. Some words I relisted, feeling they are too obscure or simply ridiculous, but the fairies insisted, reminding me that not all meanings are meant to be clear at once. Some ideas take time. Some words are designed to lead us on an inner journey, with truth hidden deep inside them in fairyland, that which seems most absurd to often the key of communication with higher spiritual forces. It is a land where wisdom is inseparable from whimsy and where leprechauns dance with angels. This is a very personal book in that you, the reader and viewer, are looking through my eyes and my heart into fairy. And yet, it is my hope that these images will encourage your own second sight to develop. Joseph Campbell has said that the artists are the shamans and the myth makers of our modern world. Like Campbell, I believe in the artist as shaman, journeying deep into uncharted inner worlds, then bringing back sensations and visions encountered in the mystical terrain. I see my picture as map of journeys I've taken through the realm of the soul, and I hope these maps will lead you to find fairy pathways of your own. Brian Freud.